Hey there, and welcome to Factorio Space Age. My name is Brune, and this is going to be a special episode because I'm actually redoing this right now. I was in the middle of editing and going through collecting the timestamps, getting the screenshots for the thumbnails, figuring out a funny title if I can, and I realized that this episode, episode 54, the entire episode had no audio, and I'm unsure why. It's kind of like this episode 54, was recorded like on like a Sunday night when I had done some recording that morning and had just finished and was about to start this episode, or not, and had just finished, and later that evening I was going to be playing some video games with my friends that I play a lot of video games with, and I was waiting for them to get on, and they were going to be a little while. So I was like, I did some ton of Factorio recording earlier, and I can't stop thinking about that. All I want to do is get back in there, and so I figured I would just hop in and start recording some episodes until they got on. And for whatever reason, either my microphone wasn't plugged in, or I had it muted before I even started, or something. I can't figure it out, but it was muted, and so all I'm going to be redoing right now is the very important part of this episode. I do a little bit of kind of tinkering with the space platform, or with my previous space platform, this one. I do a little bit of tinkering here because it's all stuck right now, and I get it unstuck and do some things with that. But really, that's going to be all torn down eventually later. I haven't done it yet, but that is something I want to do, tear that down and rebuild a whole new one. So it's not that important that it really gets fixed. But the very important thing of this episode is that I go through trying to figure out how to make essentially a sushi belt. And that is the term people in the community have given the name for a circuit that tracks everything you put onto a belt. And so I'm going to work through building that again here while I explain it. And then afterwards, I'm going to just end this recording, and I'm going to paste this over the beginning of that other episode so that all the other stuff that kind of happens in that episode without audio isn't that important. It's me just kind of tinkering around with a little bit of designing for the future space platform. But this circuit and the idea of putting items onto a belt and tracking how many items we have on the belt, is the whole idea of how I want to do my space platform. This one right here, the one that's going to come back and get me. So here I kind of had this idea of having this loop, right, that goes around and around and around, and I really liked that idea, but I'm not really doing anything to track how many of anything we have on there. It's like I have no idea how many iron chunks, I have no idea how many carbon chunks, all that stuff. And so the plan is to make a circuit that can track that, so we can say, if there is 25 iron on there, don't put any more iron on there, from the asteroid things. And if there's 25 carbon, don't put any more carbon on there. So we can always make sure we have enough on the belt and everything, but it also won't get clogged up. So to do this, I knew the concept before I began that. I've never done a sushi belt. I've never done this type of a circuit before, but I know the concept behind it, and I know all the pieces it requires to make this. And so we're gonna go through that right now. And now I made too many of those. All we really need is one decider combinator and one arithmetic combinator. And so actually I'm going to rebuild the full example here. This is what I did. I always like to make a little test example whenever I'm trying to figure any other big circuit out. And this one is, I want to track what items I put onto this belt, and I want to be able to track how many are on it specifically. So if I put on 4 pieces of iron, but then something pulls off one of them, I want to know that there's 3 pieces of iron on there at that point. And so first thing we need to do is we need to be able to store information and continue to have that data persist. And so how you store information is with a, let's add this here. You store information with a memory cell. This is also referred to as an SR latch. That is a set reset latch, which is something that has to do with the finer grains of programming and the actual ones and zeros and stuff. But essentially, what it means is that this thing can store a data, it can be set, that's the S part, but we can also reset this and delete all the data that's essentially stored within it. And I absolutely love that this exists within Factorio, because it's funny to me because it works by, we connect here we'll do it with the red one. We connect the front end to the back end. Now, the reason we do that is so that any information we put in here will be sent out back into the input, and so every cycle it constantly stays caught in here. And so the constant combinator is kind of like this machine that, like, whatever we set it to do in here, it processes it every tick of the game, which is 60 times a second. And I like to imagine it like it's this machine that we can put a number into on one side and it'll output something on the other side, right? And you can imagine yourself as like a human being, like taking a piece, you wrote 4 on a piece of paper, come over here, you stick it in this side of the machine, and then it comes out this side of the machine, and then you can do something with that. Like maybe it adds 1 to it or something, and then put a 4 in, you're gonna get a 5 out. And then you can take that to another machine and do something with it. That's kind of the concept of how this is actually working. And so by connecting the front to the back, we're saying if we put a 4 in here, and this thing is set to just output whatever we put into it, doesn't add it, doesn't subtract it, all it does is output whatever we put into it. We put a 4 in the back end, we get a 4 out of it. And because it's connected to the front, it's like we take the 4 that came out of the machine and we put it right back in the front. And then it's gonna output a 4, and then we put it right back in the front again. And so, and that's physically, and logically exactly what's happening within this latch. So how do we get that behavior from this? And so we need this to output anything, anytime there is anything in here. And it won't make sense at first, but we're gonna use R for reset, and we're gonna set it so that if R equals 0, which means there's no R signal present, then this is true, so it's going to output whatever we want. And what we want this to output is everything. Correct. Or anything. But I thought this was, no, that must be the mathematic ones, but yeah, we do everything. It's false when there are no inputs. Yep, so if there's no inputs, then it doesn't send anything. Yep. Okay. And so now, like, say, so if we add in, here, let's put this right there, and we connect this to there, we can see nothing's happening right now, right? But if we say, let's disconnect this right here, let's connect this to here, so it's now reading this. Read belt contents pulse. Pulse, the signal is sent for only 1 tick. That's very important, because remember, it's a machine that every tick is like whatever pieces of paper you put in here, it's gonna do something with them, and I'll put them on this side, right? Every single tick. And so if we had this set to hold, and it was every single tick inputting something, it would output that there's 1 in there, but then it would output, now it's putting in another 1 as this one came back in, so then there'd be 2. And then it would say, well, now I'm outputting 2, but we just put another 1 in there, and so it's gonna output 3. And it would actually count up by 1 every single tick. That is very useful, but that's not what we wanna do here. So that's why we do the pulse, so it only sends it for 1 tick. So let's take something like this yellow belt, or this yellow chest. I'll drop 1 on there, it read it, and so now if we look at this, 1 is stored in there, and it is not leaving. That signal is trapped in there. We'll never be able to get rid of that. The only way we can get rid of it is if we were to send it a signal of R, which we can simulate with with a constant combinator here. We'll set this to be R equals 1. I'm going to turn this off so it's not sending the signal right away. We can see here that this has something. As soon as I turn the signal to on, nothing. Turn it off, nothing again. So there we were able to reset the count. We could put 2 of these on here. Boop, boop. Now count up to 2. Turn this on. Count is reset. So I don't think I actually demonstrated the resetting in the previous one, but if anybody wants to use this, this is a very useful tip to be able to reset your thing without having to like delete it or something like that. So we can now continue the example I wanted to do, where we are going to use arms to put these things on. So now the arms, the inserter arms, when they are hooked up to this, they can also be set to read hand contents, pulse. So they will only set it for 1 tick. This one actually needs to not be hooked up. So this one is the one that's going to add an item into the belt. And so we can even demonstrate how if we put on, say, a yellow, a purple, and a blue, it counted all 3 of those up. This arm took all those off, so they actually aren't on there. And we will set that thing to take those off here in a second. I also want to override this so it's stack size 1, so that if it picks up 3, because I actually don't know if it counts 3 if it were to pick up more than 1. Be something to test sometime, but I think I'd just like to get this explanation done as quickly as possible to not waste people's time. Here, we'll reset this. Reset the count because there's nothing on there. So this is adding to it, and so if we were to say, well, what happens if this takes off one of those items? We need to subtract it. So anybody who has been paying attention in any of my circuit classes would know that we use the arithmetic combinator, and we use that to multiply the value by -1. That is how we turn a signal to be negative, and so that we can actually subtract a signal from this. So now we connect that to there, connect that up to there. This one needs to be pulse. I'm going to turn this sideways so that we can actually watch this live, but we will do it again. We're going to put 2 of these on, 1 of those, and 3 blues. Now we can see that it's counted that all correctly. There's 3 blues, 2 yellows, 1 purple. And this one, when we rotate it correctly, start pulling these off, it will subtract from this value, and we will see that there's no longer that many items on the belt. Yep, it took off 2 yellows, so there's no more yellows. Now it's going to take off 2 blues, there's no more blues on the belt, and last but not least, it's going to take off a purple. There you go. That is the essence of a sushi belt. And this is how we use the memory cell. That is the community name, I guess, for this. The SR latch is just something people have referred to it because it functions exactly like an SR latch, or very similar to an SR latch in actual real-life computer chips. But yeah, this is the design I'm going to use to build the space platform through this episode and the next episode, to be able to rescue me here. I'm still, my mind is boggled how I somehow didn't get the audio recorded correctly. But yeah, it happened, and I'm glad I recognized it without uploading it, because this was a very important thing, and I really wanted to be able to to teach people this and illustrate this. So I hope that makes sense with my explanation here of how this is all coming together with these different pieces, the reset button and everything too. And yeah, I'm going to end this recording here, and you'll be able to watch probably the last 15 minutes of the real recording, the live one, where I am not talking, but I end up laying down a little bit more concrete over here and start using this area to build the space platform, or at least the blueprint for it. Similar to what we did like here on Navis, where we have this thing here, and I built it up and I used these squares of belts to simulate asteroid collectors and crushers and like the big center of the thing, so I could kind of design it without having to mess around with setting up tons of resources and things. But yeah, I hope you really enjoyed that. Thank you so much. If you considering watching the rest of it where I'm not talking at all, I totally understand if you don't. But if you want to watch me kind of come up with like some cool designs, I think they're kind of cool. That's what I'll be doing for the next 15 minutes. So yeah, hope you're enjoying the series as always, and take care and enjoy the rest of this episode. Man, I don't even know how to do an outro when it's in the middle of an episode. Anyways, take care.